everybody, I'm Tom Vessel.
I'm Chris Yee.
And I'm Mike DeLisio.
And today we're taking a look at a new game from Dr. Reiner Knizia. Although he's been actually doing quite a few new games in the past couple of years. This one is called Rebirth from Mighty Boards. It is a game about building castles in Scotland in the future or something.
In the future. Theme.
By the way, I'm sorry. I want to give a lot of props here to Mighty Boards. With the production and everything in this game, looks amazing. But the theme is nonsensical. You would not even know it was the future.
Let's not spoil too many of our thoughts that I completely agree with you on.
All right, fine. Let's talk about how the game plays first, and we'll be right back. There are two sides of the board. We have Ireland on one side, and then the other side is Scotland. I guess you could argue that Scotland is the base game. There's some slight rule changes in between them. What's going to happen in this game is players are going to have a bunch of tiles that are in front of them, and on your turn, you're going to be playing a single tile. You'll take two tiles out of the game, so everyone's going to have a slightly different mix of tiles. The rest will be mixed up, and on your turn, you're going to draw a tile, you're going to draw a tile at the end of your turn, and then at the beginning of your next turn, you're going to place this tile on the board. Now, there are three kinds of tiles that you'll place out on the board. There are food farms, and a food farm can be placed at any spot on the board that is also shows that food farm symbol, or you can place it on a spot that's blank. And the same thing is for an energy farm. An energy farm can be placed on an energy symbol or on a spot that is blank. Settlements, which are going to show 1 to 4 houses, are placed at any spot that shows a settlement. You can't place on these, at least not at the beginning of the game. After placing tiles, you're going to score. So if I place an energy tile down, I'm going to score 1 point for the tile, plus 1 for every tile that's an energy farm that's an adjacent group. So if I place this one here, I'm going to get 2 points. The first one give me 1, the next one give me 2. If I put one here, I get 3, then 4, 5, 6, 7. You can get a lot of points each time. Food farms are done the exact same way. Settlements are done a little bit differently. When the last in a group of settlements is finished, you're going to compare the number of houses there, and whoever has the most is going to get points based on the size of the settlement. This is a size 3 settlement, so 8 points for first place, 5 for second. If it was a size 2 like this one here, it's 5 points and 3 points. You notice that some spots will give you extra points if you just place in them right away. There are castle spots on the board, and if you place next to a castle spot, you will put your castle there. If another player goes next to that they would have to exceed your number. If there's a tie, in this case there's a tie, you go by energy or food farms. So the red player still wins. But if let's say the tan player goes here, then they're going to replace this castle with theirs. So castles are pretty handy because they're going to score you points at the end of the game. You're going to get 5 for each one that you have. Cathedrals, the first time you go next to a cathedral, you'll put one of your cathedrals there, and if someone else goes next to it, they'll put one of theirs there. That's just a marker. When you go to a cathedral, you will draw a mission card. And when you draw these mission cards, they're going to give you points at the end of the game if you have met them. This one here, is just a cathedral bonus, just gives you 3 points. But this gives you 5 points if you occupy the most spaces adjacent to the Invergary Castle, which is way up there. So you're going to try to score points and meet these goals at the end of the game. The game is going to keep going. You'll draw cards. When everyone has placed all their tiles, each incomplete settlement scores. Castles get you 5 points each. You're going to get points for the different mission cards that you have done, and whoever has the most points is the winner. As I said, the Ireland board plays very similarly. It's just going to have some round tower bonus tiles that are going to be randomly placed out, and also there's going to be some public cards that people are going for to score points. And there's a few other minor differences, but that is basically the same thing, and it's going to play similarly. Okay, nonsensical theme. No, I don't. Here's the thing. I don't think the theme hurts the game. It's just so weird that it's in the future. Like, why could this could have been? They could have said, This is historical Scotland, and I've been like, cool.
So you could have a Zeppelin score marker. I think it's gorgeous, though. I mean, speaking like production, there's like a fancier and a not as fancy edition. This one I think is like the not as fancy edition.
Wait, is it really?
Yeah, because I think the fancier one has like miniatures for the score trackers and stuff. But this is gorgeous as is.
Trash.
Yeah, excuse me, I got caught up there. Yeah, I think they're relatively similar, but essentially everything is good looking regardless of the edition you have, as I think you were saying there, Chris. I wonder, could the future thing be maybe so that you don't have to worry about any historical inaccuracies because nothing happened yet? How about that?
Actually, I think, I'm not joking. That's what I was going to say. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And people say, well, this castle was built before this castle. And they're like, nah, it's the future. You got to rebuild everything.
Right. Well, I'm laying out this big solar farm over here. Well, soy wasn't planted in Ireland. No, it's a quite abstract game, but has a very simple flow to it. And I don't know. I like that I don't have to worry about the setting too much, but the game works well.
Now, for me, this game feels remarkably similar in many ways to Kingdom Builder. Because Kingdom Builder from Donald X. Vaccarino, you have a single card, you play that card, you do what it says. In this game, you have a single tile, you do that, and you score for placing tiles, and you do that in both games. Now, I don't want to get too caught up in the weeds here because there's a lot of other differences, and I'm not here to necessarily compare them, but I did have that same feeling. It felt very similar in many ways.
For me, the point of comparison for this was another Knizia game that came out that was new recently, Havilandi, the one where you rolled the die and you move the hot air balloon around the outside track.
Oh,
and then
I hate that game so much.
And I think it's interesting because I think you and Mike have very different opinions on Havilandi.
Mike's opinion is colored because no one could like that game.
But for me, I think that this is a stronger version of a lot of the things that game was looking to do. Very simple tile laying, try to kind of connect things or make groups and such, with some clever scoring opportunities and objectives to work towards. Havilandi had all that, but this one, I feel like, gives you the feeling of more immediate control and more goals that you can clearly work towards rather than accidentally.
Yeah, I actually am fine with both of those comparisons. I definitely got a Kingdom Builder feel from it as well. And I can see the comparisons with Havilandi. If so, this is a much more clean and elegant version of that game. But really, what it reminds me a little bit more of is that this is kind of the second new big tile laying game he put out this year. You know, he put out Cascadero and he's put out this one, and they feel very different to me. What's interesting to me, the most kind of, I'll just put it out there, impressive thing about Rebirth is that I'm trying to think of another designer really that can do something like this, which is you've all got these random face down tiles in front of you. On your turn, you're picking one of them randomly and you're placing it on a board with some restrictions. That's it. And you're scoring some points. But that leads to such a satisfying experience. So to me, this is a hallmark of, this is kind of hallmarking, if that's a word, I'm going to make it a word, what one of the strengths of Reiner Knizia is, which is simple rule set, remarkably simple turn, interaction, decisions. That's the thing that's the hook to this.
Okay, well, I'll disagree slightly on this because I'm not as enamored, blatantly like you are with Mr. Knizia.
Dr. Knizia, thank you.
Sorry, I meant His Majesty Knizia. But anyway, no, but there's a couple things, and I want to be clear, I like the game. There's a couple things that bug me a bit about it. One is Mike talked about the randomness of the tiles, and that does bug me a bit. I really dislike the taking two tiles out at the beginning. In essence, the idea of that is, hey, everyone has a different mix. Great. But the 4 towns tiles are clearly better than the 1s. And if you lose a 4 and a 3, for example, which is not an unreasonable thing to happen, you are at a slight disadvantage. That bugs me. The other part about the randomness with the tiles is that sometimes you're trying to build something, and you're like, where is the stupid wind, solar energy, whatever, it's the energy farm tile. I've drawn 5 tiles now and I haven't. There's no way to like save up to make a good play. You're living in the now and in the moment. And that's fine because the game is only 60 minutes, but I could see sometimes that could be frustrating because the one time you need something, you don't have it, although this is definitely a hallmark of Kinesia since Tigris and Euphrates.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for me it adds to that sense of tension. It's not only turn angst, right? Because you're sitting there going, I have an energy farm here, and I could play it out into this area to make a bigger one, score more points, but someone might shut me down. But the other players at the table might not have the tiles to shut me down. So it just, I like the excitement that it adds as it forces me to debate which way I'm going to go. Should I take a safer one? Should I take a riskier bet that might pay off more points later? Because you are accruing a lot of in-game points from making big groupings. But you are kind of trying to read, okay, well, other players haven't drawn a lot of the towns yet, so you are making conscientious decisions with that, knowing what's removed, what you have in hand and such.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I do disagree with the 2 tile thing. To me, that's a feature of the game because...
Yeah, well, then you need to tell me how it's not a disadvantage to lose my 4 and 3 at the beginning.
I was getting to that, Tom. I was getting to that. The idea is that every player is going to be at a disadvantage at the beginning of the game, but only they know what that disadvantage is. That's going to inform what they're going to do when they get to the tiles that they're short on. So yes, if you lose your 3 and a 3 and a 4 town at the beginning of the game, you know that. Nobody else knows that. You know that. So you have to account for that in what your placement is going to be. Everybody's going to be at some kind of a disadvantage. And that's also where building next to the areas that get you the cards are going to be playing into it, because you're going to be, oftentimes what you have in the beginning, what you've put aside, can inform the type of things that you're going to be focusing on. So I don't know. I don't see that as a huge issue.
Okay, well, then riddle me this. If I don't have my 4 and my 3, and Chris doesn't have his 1 and his 2, we're both at a disadvantage in building towns. But I'm at a bigger disadvantage. That is simple math.
Yes, I understand that point, but to Mike's point, you know what your weakness is, right? Is it slightly unfair? Yeah. Will it make or break the game? I don't think that it's strong enough to. I just think that
I'm playing a house rule. If you draw 4, you can throw it back in and draw a different tile.
Also, anytime you wear a green shirt from now on, I'm going to call you the Riddler.
I did. I fell into my own trap. Okay, I do want to be clear. That's a minor thing. I mean, it's something I know. It's the other minor thing that is an issue, and it's a player issue, and how your play group deals with it. It's a very interactive game. You're back and forth playing games. You're blocking each other. And so this falls into that position in games that sometimes irks me, where Chris is winning. He just put his 6th energy farm next to each other. Mike, you block him. Mike says, I ain't blocking him. That's your job. And I'm like, well, it ain't my job. And Chris wins. And no, I get it, right? But that can be an issue sometimes where I feel like I'm forced to block somebody instead of making a more optimal move for myself. And in a 2-player game, I love that because it evens out in the wash. Me blocking you is essentially stopping you from getting points. But if me blocking you gives a 3rd or a 4th person points, it's less satisfying. And that actually is my main sticking point for me. Thinking this is a great game. I think it's a good game, but that bugs me, and it bugs me a lot, actually.
At the higher player count. I'm curious, Mike, if you have thoughts, particular rebuttal on that.
I do. Can I posit something without hopefully making you too defensive, Tom? That is very much a youth. I'm not saying that you're the only person that has that annoyance, but that is a particular annoyance to you. So I would just posit that may not be as much of an issue to other players. But for you, it's an issue, so it's valid. For me...
To me and my gang, my leprechaun gang.
So when you have that issue, pause it. That's what Mike is saying.
Yeah, I know. I heard what he said. No, I get it, Mike. I agree that it's a me issue, but I don't even think I'm rare. I think there's a lot of people who don't like that. That's the only reason I'm mentioning it. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. It's just in the game.
And I'm not even saying it's rare, but I am saying that this is something you've mentioned in several games where that type of thing shows up, because I don't think that type of thing showing up is particularly rare, right? In interactive games where blocking can occur, I think that's almost inevitable. I mean, there are some games that mitigate it a bit, but that's going to be an element of games where blocking might be involved. I think what makes it a little bit less of an issue here is that there's almost nothing you're doing that's not going to be benefiting you in some way. You do have to make that choice amongst yourself. Okay, well, if I do this, I'm gaining 3 points, a card, and blocking Chris. So there's that. If I go over here, I'm getting 8 points because I'm closing out this 3-area town. Is one better than the other? It might depend upon where you're at in the game. It might depend upon what cards you have. It might depend on a number of different factors. So yes, I can see that being an issue for some people. I never found it to be something that hampered my enjoyment of the game.
I think that, once again, it kind of goes back to that random tile drawing you have in your hand. This is one of those games where if I'm the second to last person before that person who's in the lead, and I have the tile to stop them, I have to determine, is it worth it not only to risk the fact that you might not want to, but you might not even have the right tile to block that space. So it's another layer of decision. It's not my favorite thing, but it doesn't bother me. One point I do want to make to an earlier complaint of yours, Tom, about the tiles that you take out. The back side, the second side of the map, you set aside more tiles at the start, but then certain areas allow you to draw from that side stack and then place them out.
Yes, no,
and I think
that map is better, by the way. It is, I think.
And I think, ironically, I like the other map a little bit more. It's a little bit more chaotic. The Ireland one, I think, is the one they recommend to start with. Scotland feels a little more strategic because the objective cards are public and face up.
No, that's Ireland, I think.
Or maybe I'm saying them wrong. I'm sorry. Whichever, yeah. So the one that has the extra tiles you set aside, certain places that allow you to draw from the set aside ones and play them out, also has the face-up objectives that everyone shares. I think some more strategic players might like that, and I think more tactical players might enjoy the other side, where you have the random card draw of objectives and the set-aside tiles you'll never get to. But so I think that's a strong feature of this game. You can kind of play to your preferred style.
Well, Chris stole my thunder there. My final rating of this game is a 7, but I would give the Ireland side a 7.5 and the Scotland side a 6.5. So I'm averaging out to a 7 because I like the game. I think Mighty Boards did a good job. I'm not trying to discourage anyone from getting this. I know I've said a lot of negative things, but they're all minor, and I just want people to know what they're getting into. This 60 minutes, I think, especially in the Scotland map, there's a good chunk of luck. From the tiles you draw to where you're trying to go, but there's also a lot of luck in drawing those objective cards. Sometimes you draw it and you're like, I already control this castle. That's free points. And other times you draw one and go, I couldn't control this castle if I wanted to. And that's just luck. And those are not small amounts of points. It could be the difference between winning and losing. But again, it's only 60 minutes, so not a big deal. I think those problems are solved on the other side with the public objectives. So I think there's something in here for everybody. So I enjoy this game. I think it's beautiful produced. I tend to like Knizia's tile-laying games. This reminds me a little bit of Babylonia that he did a few years ago. And they're my favorite genre that he does for me. So 7.
For me, this is an 8. I think that I like both sides of the map about the same. I enjoy the Scotland one just a little bit more with some of that luck of drawing into those objectives and having some secrets that you're keeping from the other players. But both are great. The Rewood is phenomenal in this. I'm glad to see another company using that stuff the CGE made. I think the production's off the charts.
I just realized that's what it was.
Oh, yes, yeah, absolutely. So huge props to that. But I just find this game so pleasant and enjoyable. And while it's tight and it's, just there's those little clean things like the majority for castles has a nice way of just of resolving who has that majority, because having a majority amongst 6 spaces is always so kind of finicky. And this one does it well by having those little extra rules that really round out the whole game. I think this is superbly fun. So it's an 8 from me.
It's also an 8 for me. I think what you said, Chris, checks out about one side of the map favoring more strategic while the other side favors more of the tactical. And I I like them both, but I do favor the tactical side because that's just my play style. I agree with Tom that this is not going to be a game for everybody. You have to be okay with a significant amount of luck just by its very design. You're choosing a face-down random tile, and then you got to figure out what's best for me here. It's got a little bit of a point salad feel, which is something that Reiner Knizia is doing a little bit more recently. You know, you think of games like Mille Fiori and things like that. Everything you do is giving you some amount of points. But the time span for the amount of time the game takes, it's so fast. And the turn angst that you get, that's what puts it into a strong recommend for me, because I feel like the rules get out of its way. As Chris said, I agree. There's elegant ways when any type of, tiebreaker thing has to happen. It's usually very simple to figure out. There's a fair bit of scoring going on, and I do want to say a slight negative for me is that endgame scoring can be a little bit laborious if you've got a bunch of those cards. That can kind of be a pain, especially when you're comparing majorities to other players. It's like, okay, how many 2 area spots are you in? I have 4. That I don't love. That's probably my biggest issue with the game is the end game scoring, but still an 8, very, very solid tile laying game.
There you go, folks. That is Rebirth from Dr. Reiner Knizia. I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Chris Yee.
And I'm Mike DeLisio.
Have fun rewooding. No, that's terrible. don't use that.
We're using it.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you like this review or whatever you just watched, wasn't it amazing? Check out our channel, Dice Tower. We have all kinds of things. We review games, we do top 10s, we play games live. It's all about board games, but especially the people who play them. Check out Dice Tower YouTube channel.